So this spinning and just going forward to the point is brilliant. Hi there, I'm Matt Easton of Scholar Gladiatoria, which is a historical fencing club and also a YouTube channel as well. And I teach people how to use weapons from across history,
Stream
across
elements.
continents, including things like
Welcome
knives,
to my
daggers,
channel.
swords, axes,
S.W.Frost
spears,
is now
and so on
live
and so
streaming
forth.
Call
And
of
I've been
Duty
doing
Modern
this for
Warfare 3.
25
No
years,
digital
teaching
art offers.
students
Thank you.
and
Little
also
vacation
working
for me,
with
I guess.
film,
XD.
TV, and museums. And today I'm going to be looking at even more
Nightbot.
weapons from Elden
Welcome
Ring.
to my channel.
Oh, wow, okay, that's a weird looking thing. So it's sort of like a rapier and it's sort of like a long sword. First of all, are there any blades from the real world
Ako
which have a
kupuješ
spiral
patike
blade?
non
Well,
stop,
up
znači da
until
nisi
relatively
normalan.
recently I would have said no. However,
Obično se
there is a
uzima
type
da
of
traje što
knife,
duže, ne da se
particularly
menja
a type
svaki
of
2
knife
minuta.
known as the cyclone, I think, which has a spiral blade. And this is supposed to give a particularly horrific type of wound that's very difficult to treat and causes huge blood loss quickly. Now, if we consider this in sword size, does that make any sense? Possibly not. So it'd be very difficult to make. This is a fantasy setting, so I'm not going to worry about that. How would you use it? Well, one thing I would say is absolutely don't cut with it, because it's not going to cut. It's essentially a spiral bar. It's a bit like a giant corkscrew, isn't it? So if you imagine hitting something with a corkscrew, it's not going to cut anything. If you stab something with a corkscrew, it will. Wow, look at that thing. That's awesome. I want one, but I literally can't think of a sword maker who'd be able to make that, apart from the complication of making the giant corkscrew. The heat treatment of that, how are you going to keep it? I don't know. Anyway, they make corkscrews, I guess. Maybe I should approach a corkscrew maker. So it's essentially a big two-handed sword. This is going to be useless for cutting with, although you could hit someone with it. It's not going to cut at all. But thrusting, corkscrew nature would limit the penetration. So in theory, you'd have to apply so much force to penetrate into a target with a corkscrew blade that it would make it an ineffective thrusting weapon. However, in a fantasy setting, if you're very strong and the things that you're stabbing are very big and fleshy, like elephant size, then maybe it would make sense. Yay! And he thrust with it. I was really hoping that he wasn't going to do a big old cut with that corkscrew blade, because with this type of blade, it's just not going to cut. Thrusting is the way to use it.
Ali ja mislim da čak I on to zna. Zato znaš, ako si primetio njegovi dolaz, on sve dođe na blic.
I really like these massive great stabs.
Ja. Onda malo duže ostane, ako ne, onda kao sam smukupio. Hvala.
Čekaj, majko mu jebe, stanimo.
Ne bi bilo, možda bi bili neki normalni razgovori.
Svaki dan o klimi se priča. Meni je to dosta normalno. Malo Slavko.
Ja I opet ja. Ja, u životu imam sve.
Ne, ide ovako, ja, moje. Ja, moje, ja, moje, ja.
O, gdje si bila da? Evo,
Lupus infabulous.
klikćemo.
Aaaa.
Klikćemo. Ti?
Stream snipe.
A ako svaka čast, u čemu klikćeš recimo? A! Koje su ti te patike? A, Salomon patike, a. A, viđu. Gdje ih uzimaš?
Ja se izvinjam. Kuku.
O dobro, imaš dosta modela koji su tako oko 10.000, 10. Koje si uzeo? Jesi uzeo neke od ovih četvrćih, čekaj, ovo imaju za 6.300. Ovi nisu loši, znači. Crveno i drečovo zelena. Daj. Brate, iz nekog osjećaja trebao sam znao da će biti skroz crveno.
Kako si znao? Šta ga je odalo? Je li kecano?
O! Cijelo ostalo, ne, to se ceni. No. Da.
So he's actually using it a bit like a spear
No.
or a bayonet, and this is the right way to use this weapon, according to me anyway. It's not a cutting weapon, it's completely a thrusting weapon, but generally speaking, these are stabbing implements, and they are absolutely specialised for that. So I'm actually kind of loving this sword, because it's got, essentially, it's an S-stock in function, with some characteristics of a rapier to the hilt design, which makes it look a bit prettier than an S-stock normally does. Usually an S-stock just usually has a simple crossguard. The Knight Rider Flail. So a flail, I love the fact that they called it a flail and they haven't called it a Morning Star or one of the other multiple names that get bandied around. A flail is the proper name for an articulated weapon. It has its origin in an agricultural implement that is usually two sticks which are connected via a flexible bit, sometimes just two rings. This became a specialised military weapon, which sometimes involved spiky heads and a chain and then a long handle. They've actually got the proportions of this really good. So one of the common flaws we see is that the ball and chain element is longer than the shaft, which means that if you overswing, you'll hit yourself with the chain and the spiky balls. In this case, the shaft is long enough such that if those balls swung around, they would hit the shaft above your hand. And that's correct. According to the artwork and everything we know about them, the majority of flails were constructed in this way, where the articulated bit was shorter than the handle element. So he's got a pair of them, which is an interesting choice. One of the big weaknesses of a flail is you can't really defend very well or barely at all with it. To begin with, the choreography or the movement, the body mechanics for how they've modelled this person using two flails is actually quite similar to how we saw him using two claws. And I think that's kind of right. So one of the secrets to using a flail successfully and not injuring yourself and injuring the target is essentially thinking about the line of momentum. Okay, you can't suddenly change direction with a flail because it's got a flexible element at the end of it. So if you start to move in this direction and suddenly move over here, it will jerk the end around and it will just completely rob you of all momentum. So instead you have to follow through with the motion and then come somewhere else that's continuing the full extension of the ball on the chain. So it's all about trying to keep that striking element fully extended on the chain so that your momentum is all carried up in that striking head. And this type of movement, this flowing circular motion, does kind of represent that pretty damn well. One thing that I think is really interesting is when he comes up against these two guys, he holds one shaft, it looks like he's holding it with two hands, and just twirls the end around. When I first saw that, I thought, that is genius, really, really cool. It looks awesome. And initially I was impressed by it, but then I stopped and thought about it, and the problem with it is that instead of when you swing the whole weapon, you've got the momentum of the lever or the handle, then you've got the chain, then you've got the ball at the end. So you've essentially got something that is this far away from your hand. Now, by spinning this, you're only using the chain and the ball element. You're not really using the lever of the length and leverage of the handle. So you're only spinning a much smaller thing. It's going to have less striking force. And the problem is, as soon as it hits something, it's going to stop. So when I talked about flowing through, it's about continuing the motion. And here, when you just spin the end of this ball around, and as soon as that ball hits something, it will stop. Okay, if you're using a bouncy ball, it will bounce. But if you're using an iron ball, it will stop. And at that point, it's not going to keep spinning around. Whereas what we see here is like some kind of like cutting or like helicopter blade or something. It goes through the target and keeps on spinning. You just couldn't get that much energy with that machine. You can get that much energy into that ball for it to keep spinning. The moment it hits the opponent, it will stop spinning. Whoa! That is massive. This is more of a typical example of how axes are represented in fantasy in general. Like way too big. I mean, that's, I don't know, like 6 times bigger, maybe more than that, maybe 8 times bigger than an actual poleaxe. So this person not only has got an axe that probably weighs about the same as a car engine, but he's also made the very brave decision to hold a shield, a small shield, in the left hand as well. Are they going to use this one-handed? Oh man, they are. Oh, no. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin with that. How could anybody use an axe of this size, number one, but then take an axe of this size and decide to use it one-handed? It's just not going to happen unless you're stronger than than any living creature on Earth currently. And I mean, yeah, you absolutely would kill a horse with one blow with an axe of that size. There's no question there. I mean, even so, there are various weapons throughout history which have been famous for being horse killers. And of course, why would you want to kill horses? Because the enemy ride them. Okay, so it's cavalry, anti-cavalry weapons. Famously, there are accounts of the housecarls' two-handed axes being used to fell the Norman knights by chopping the horse in half. So, you know, in fairness, it is a colossal axe, and if you could swing it, yeah, it would be an absolute fight ender for just about any creature you hit with it. The Dark Moon Greatsword. It's a really wide sword. You know, just because you can hold something in both hands doesn't mean that it's always a good idea. Clearly, if I have a one-handed sword, I'd grab a one-handed sword. Look, here's a one-handed sword. If I grab a one-handed sword and I happen to find another one, yeah, why not hold two of these in both hands? Because it's a one-handed sword. But the problem with great swords is they are so big and cumbersome, they're not one-handed swords, so why hold them in one hand? If you're doing a thrust with it, great, but using a great sword in each hand is just, in the real world, a terrible idea. It's like, oh, why not wield a halberd in each hand, a pike in each hand? The problem is some weapons you can use in one or two hands, some weapons obviously you can use in one hand, and some weapons can only be, most of the time, only be sensibly used in two hands. Using great sword in each hand, it doesn't really work, but clearly this character's strong enough to do it, so what the hell. So in terms of the actual movements, I quite like it. So it tends to be, from what I've seen so far, quite one-directional, so it tends to be a blow with one arm and then a blow with the other arm following the exact same path and usually to about the same target. This is actually something we see in treatises done with sticks and swords as well, across the centuries and across whether you're looking at Southeast Asia or Northern Europe or wherever, we can find systems that the movements are quite big and wide, but then again they have to be because these are massive swords. Overall, that sword I thought was completely plausible, and I liked it as a great sword, as a two-handed sword. I wasn't really happy with taking a great sword and turning it into a sword in each hand. It doesn't make sense. You can't do that with a pair of great swords. It's not, I find it difficult to buy into that. Oh my gosh, Geezer's wheel, so it's like a Catherine wheel then. Great iron wheel lined with flesh-flaying blades. Device of torture. Usually weapons of torture are not great weapons of war. So it's actually kind of like a chainsaw. Given what it is, it's kind of like a chainsaw or a strimmer. Using it as a thrusting weapon kind of makes sense, I guess. If this was a real thing, that kind of makes sense, just using it like a giant axe or a mace, and then sometimes thrusting with the spinning end. Yeah, I guess that's how it would be used if it was a real thing. Oh, a petal whip. Okay, so whips, a normal bullwhip is a terrible weapon. Lots of people will tell you that they reach a supersonic speed at the tip, and that's where you get the crack from, and all these sorts of things. And you know, if you're Indiana Jones, you can use it for swinging across caverns, and you can slash people's faces open. The fact is that compared to normal weapons in a normal military or war setting, a whip is useless. Can't do anything to someone in any kind of thick clothing or armor, definitely. And you just take one hit clothing, grab it. It's a rubbish weapon. However, if you could make the whip of blades, so people have tried to do this in history. There have been types of articulated bladed weapons. Probably the most famous comparable weapon is the Indian weapon. It's always India that comes with the wackiest ideas for weapons. There's a fantastic array of Indian weapons. It's called an urumi. An urumi is essentially a long strip of sharpened steel. It's not exactly like a whip. It's usually described as a type of sword. However, it has a very long, flexible, whip-like blade that is edged and tipped, and you can twirl it around and slash it around, and it's very intimidating. How is this going to work? Let's see. Oh, okay, so that's a bit surprising. So one thing I do like, it's got quite a considerable handle, shaft size on it. which means in reality, if this was a real weapon, there are certain things you can do with that shaft by itself, without the whip part, especially including defensively. And one of the problems with the whip is it's got no defense at all, it's all attack, and not even a very good attack. But when you've got a decent amount of shaft, as you find on a flail or a warhammer or an axe, then you can defend with that shaft, you can block with it. So I like that, and also you notice it's got the adaptation of a handguard on this one. So to me, it looks like the designers of this weapon have thought this through and they've gone, okay, we need to be able to block and defend with essentially a big extended handguard, but then you've got your whip ready to lash out when you use it. That's a pretty clever design, and I quite like it. Now, the question of how this would affect the targets, is it cutting, is it whipping, is it raking? I don't really know, and actually I don't really care that much. I think that a weapon with this length and with that amount of momentum to it, if you had blades pointing or spikes pointing in multiple directions, it would have a kind of clawing or raking effect on the target. It wouldn't cut like a sword or an axe, but it would certainly be really quite nasty to be hit by. It probably wouldn't be very effective on people in armor, but against creatures not wearing any clothes or against people just in civilian clothes, I think it would have an awful lot of effect because of the speed and momentum, really the velocity of that moving object. It's light, but it's moving with a lot of speed and acceleration. So I think it would have a lot of effect on fleshy targets and not very much effect on
Volim
armor.
Boris Fans.
I love that extending, elastic, stretchy spring whip. I want one of those. I want one of those, mate. I want to see what it does. But the way it was represented
Sinoć
on
sam
screen,
gledao,
to my mind, totally
objašnjava jedan
if you could make something
creator.
for how it would move.
Ej,
And I
jebe ga,
love
YouTube
that
creator,
it would pass
streamer.
through the floor, like what a Warhammer might do, that actually
Igra je.
stopped on the floor and retracted
Once Human i objašnjava je taj progres,
full path, so it wasn't a
blueprint
set
i
that
objašnjava je tačno šta se resetuje. Ali ne resetuje se sve,
beautifully done. So
ali resetuje se mapa sa zadacima i resursima koji ti trebaju za kraftovanje. To je malo bez veze, ono, znaš.
No, znam, ne mislim da se sezone. Sezone mi mi smo se u Diablo, ali
Ni u Diablu nemaš takav grind. Imaš, resetuje ti zadatke, da, ali zadatke ne moraš da radiš. Ništa ne propuštaš, jel tako?
Neurotic Official.
Gdje si, Darko?
Welcome to my channel.
Kad će sezona 5, a? Drakula smo probali novu mapu i
Use reduce.
u sredu, dobro, taman idemo tamo sam na godišnjem, pa da iskoristimo malo slobodno vremena. Pardon, nisam na godišnjem, pošto Milano ovo pisuškuje i daći sebi za pravo da se pozove kod mene. Ne, nisam na godišnjem, definitivno.
aha.
Još mi treba on svako jutro mi dolazi na kafu. Ne, definitivno radim svaki dan, da. A ako me vidite da
J.A.
igram...
Slavo i Graham Cod.
Nisam vidjeli.
Da, ako igram kod ili Elden Ring, ne daj Bože sutra, ono 15 sati, to je anomalija. Ali meni se isto vata, znaš. Verujem da je tako. Meni se isto vata, ja... Jest. Jes je. Kad ćete update? Je li Slavko? Slavko! Ništa.
Molim.
Da. Kad ćete update za DVD?
Pa, valjda 24. 2 na 8 misliš ovo, a?
2 na 8, da, taj novi mod.
Mislim da je 24.
Mislim, nisam neki fan, ali zanima me koliko će to uneti promjene za igru. Za igru koju ne igram, dosta se interesujem za takve stvari, pošto mi deluje kao nešto što će malo uzdrmati, da kažemo, i survivore i killere.
Žet. Biće, ja mislim, žestoko.
Isto kao što će bullet drop uzdrmati met u Hunt Showdownu, znaš. Mosin repetirke i Mauser pištolje, razumeš, to ti je trenutno meta, ili shotgun, onaj kako se zove, shotgun i sa uppercutom, znači zevan kad vidim to. Da ne kažem da mi se ide u toalet. Ima onaj lik ako neko prati na YouTube one short kanale. Ima onaj, on je profesionalni shooter, testira oružja, opremu. Čovjek uzme poluautomatsku pušku, znači da ono svaki, da kažemo, svaki put kad pučeš obarač ispališ jedan metak. Znači puca, znači nevjerojatno kako ima kontrolu, razumeš, puca full auto, to još nisam vidio. Da čovjek može da klik povuče obarač, razumeš, u sekundi povuče recimo obarač 10 puta. Misliš da ono puca full auto, ma kak, semi auto. Kuc. Ne, nećeš. Wow. Iz neba pa u rebra, a? Ti živiš u omacima bijelim. Wow. Ela. Ko vam je kodirao, a ide mi samo znati. Kerovi. Jučer sam gledao bio listu ovih inkantacija i spellova iz DLC-a za ovaj Elden Ring. A oko pola njih ne vredi kurc. da se
Ma da.
izvinem na izraz. Ili je šteta loša, ili je cast,
Da.
cast jako spor, razumeš,
To je
užas.
standard, to je standard. Standard je uspio od Dark Souls keca, brate, i tako.
Pola ne valja, a ovi što valjaju,
Pa su i koristili
na primjer imaš Soldier, kako zove, Soldier Lightning Spear. A znaš šta je Lightning Spear iz starih igara? Ono, koplje munj. Da, a zamisli 7 komada. Znači, jedno čaržuje i stvori se oko njega još 6 sa strane. I ako svi se konektuju, a nije problem da se konektuju jer imaju dobar tracking, pogodi ga 7 kopalja odjednom. To ti uradi, pošto ja imam nekih 42-3 fejta i dobar talisman za inkantacije i bez ikakvih posebnih boostova. 1700 HP skill. Za relativno malo mane. Znači nevjerovatno. Nevjerovatno. Sad sam se setio zašto ne mogu da ti dam armor set. Onaj što sam te ti dam. Pa to je jedini koji imam. I to sam ga farmo bio. Taj konkretno, kako se zove, Rauch Ruin Golden Bird set ili kako se zove. Treba da prođeš bukvalno kroz portal, da buffuješ taj Chance to Find i jedan jedini neprijatelj trenutno koji ti je dostupan, znaš, baca čitav armor set i oružje. I ubio sam ga jedno sat vremena da mu baci čitav set i mačeve. I zato nisi imao da ti bacim ovaj armor, taj. Nisi imao.
Evo pravim odmah. Samo da.
Kao da je manji model oružja. Možda ja trepujem. Jesi ti bi ubio Maleniju, jes? Na onom svom save-u.
Da, pa ja mislim da ubio sve koje sam znao, mislim one neke skrivene.
I imaš Estel. Imaš Estel da ubiješ.
Imam onog znaja, što si ga vidio i ne znam što još ima.
A ako si radio running quest imaš onoga Estel Born of Stars. Kako se zove, one velike buletine.
Ubio sam to davno. Natural Born in Void, ja mislim.
Jest, taj.
Njega sam baš davno ubio.
A u suštini moraš njega da ubiješ da bi mogao da završiš running quest. Viš, to sam zaboravio totalno.
Znam da sam se borio prvo sa Blindom ispred i onda sam ne.
A ti si zapravo progresao njen quest. Vrlo sam impresioniran.
Nije, ja sam mislio da... Ja nisam znao da to nije quest, ja sam mislio da radim Blind quest za njegov armor mač.
Pa dobiješ ti njegov armor set i oružje, nije problem.
Tako da, znaš, ja sam to slučajno završio da kažemo tako.
A kako se zove onaj Moonlight Greatsword ti je easter egg iz svih Souls igara, to znaš jel tako?
Ne mogu meni je ti sranje.
Imaš ga u jednom ili drugom obliku u svakoj Souls igri. Jedino ne znam da li imaš u Sekiru. To već ti možda znaš ako si igra. Ima ga u Bloodborne jeba. U Dark Soulsu 2 ima pravi lažni. Kad završiš quest od jednog NPC-a, da ne kažem da ga ubiješ, imaš da pokupiš kao nije Moonlight Greatsword, nego Blue Blade Sword, ili kako već, neka glupost. I tek kad odeš na New Game Plus, određeni NPC ti valjda da kao Trumpu, ja mislim, za to. Gdje me Chicken Ash? Ne čuje se, a?
Kako se odavno?
Ne, odgovara na poruke, vidio sam mi odgovorio odmah mi odgovorio na Discord poruku, znaš, ali nije tu. To je vrlo impresivno, znaš.
Ovdje ga nema.
Ruki.
Ne verujem da treba 10 killova sa ovom kamuflažom da bi se uradio ovaj challenge. Treba predložiti Cryteku, tako nešto.
On je Aleksandar Vučić.
Nešto dođi pa onda.
Jo, hit. Evo, pa bolest ne igra.
Ali ono mi je bilo hit kad je rekao, znaš. Kad je rekao da instalira igru, sutradan je već odletala s kompjutera.
Za kam ti misliš?
Da.
Ma to je momentalno uninstalirao, kaže kako je skinuo,
Poslije jednog meča.
Pa tako nešto se odmah razočarao i kaže odmah izmislio neko brate da ste
Puka. Outlast Trials da nađeš, to ja tebi da kažem. Au, to je bolest. Baš i bolest mi ide.
Misliš bolesno dobra? Outlast Trials, to je nešto ima multiplayer, jel tako?
Yeah.
Marvelous. Welcome to my channel.
Jen, dva. On my way. Revive F8. Gdje je F8? A, B, C, D, E, F. Au, brate. Who cares? Najgluplje mjesto u igri. Šta ima infrared? Country roads take me
Armando.
home to a place I belong.
Diego.
10-4. We got him.
Jel se računa Terry Pratchett?
Uvijek
William Gibson.
uvijek se računa Terry Pratchett. Ko čita Terry Pratchetta, taj...
Jules Verne.
Nije tako.
Pa Jules Verne je dosta...
Orlovi rano lete.
Misliš Branko Ćopić, hvala. Pitaj mene.
Ovo garant znači nešto smejurija. Pazi ovo.
Bori se...
Ne, igraju to.
A čečki, da su to bili knjige koje si morao da pročitaš ili su to bili
Hteo.
neke tvoje izborne? Jel
Jesi hteo?
promenja?
Ma razlike. Wait! Wait! Hold on a minute.
Tamo, bre,
Yeah, go buy yourself a drink. No, no, no. Yeah. Wait!
do pet, taj onak jer nemam ni pojma.
Marking contact.
Ma tu su sad svi.
F5. Hmm.
Ne znam mnogo, ajde sad. Pa dobro, ajde. Niko da... Ali malo dublje, ali...
Come on.
Njemu već meta. Dobro. Pa dobro, super.
Just combination. Yeah. Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world, see everybody's looking for something.
Nema nam ga žao, jebem ga usta ga je.
Got eyes on an enemy strong.
Postavio sam bio jedno pitanje, ako ima žena, molim vas sklonite ih od Discorda. Ako daš muškarcu da ti uradi oral ili što se kaže napušiš ga kuca, ili? Da li si ti gej? Ili je samo on? To je trik pitanje inače.
Mai da ljudi kao.
Marking contact.
Znači da je to da ovako ne bi znači, ali uzim jedan ili da ide. Treba da. Da je što je sad.
Enemy comms indicate a weapons cache near your
This
location.
is David Rawlings. He is a master of swordsmanship and weapon arts with over 25 years' experience and is the founder of the London Longsword Academy. Today he's looking at some of the weapons and fighting styles from From Software's newest epic, Elden Ring.
You use a hammer like this, I'd suggest that you're probably not going to have an intact back to make it up the stairs.
I highly recommend checking out the London Longsword Academy. All their links and information will be in the description. But without further ado, let's see what a swordmaster makes of Elden Ring.
So, the water, and here we have a little bit of kerosene. If you notice the grip in there, it's quite long, so this is what I would call an arming sword. And sometimes this gets called broadsword, but sometimes a long sword or a sword in two hands also gets called broadsword. So it's a little bit of a throwaway term that doesn't really mean very much. So, for me, if I'm fencing, if I'm holding a sword in one hand and its main utility is one hand, really it's going to be a sword in one hand. That's as simple as it goes. And that could be a rapier, it could be a dussac, it could be, as I say, an arming sword. If the sword has enough room for me to put 2 hands on it, now I can use this like a longsword. And because of having the sword in my 2 hands, my body structure has to change slightly to adapt to it. So effectively, I would use the techniques that I would use with longsword. And then really what we have is a debate between the difference of length of my blade and that of my opponent. So it's a little bit of a broad subject for a badly named sword. So broadsword in the game, a little bit of a throwaway term. You can use these things in 2 hands, and that's really what we would call a longsword. You can hold in 1 hand, it would be an arming sword, or depending on the blade type, potentially a rapier, or potentially a side sword. And usually with those things, we're really discussing the hilt more than we are the blade. Okay, one thing that I will draw attention to is there's, if you like me and you play Elden Ring, you might have these points where you kind of like, you huddle behind your shield and then you do an attack. Now, I want you to think kind of how illogical this is. If you're doing a block and then you get to do an attack, that means your opponent can either carry on attacking by just going, well, you've blocked, now I'm going to do another attack, or they have time to react again in some other form. So really, you will very often actually take the blow on the sword or deflect with the sword rather than using the shield. So these sort of like hide behind the shield, do something. Yeah, not the best use, to be honest. Nice little slips, rearranging the space, take the blow and attack at the same time, take the blow. Quite often cut the leg because people will naturally cover their face, which will expose the leg. This sort of thing is more the sort of thing you want to see in sword and shield combat. One thing that Elden Ring does get really, really historically accurate is the art of sneaking up to someone while wearing full plate or full chain and just shanking them from behind, because you can't fault that, genuinely. Whenever I see the Dark Souls drawing of the sword, the Iaido style move and the leaping forwards, for some reason I think that Dead Cells has got it so much better than Elden Ring. It's really, really cool. It's just this nip across the screen and you just take out everything in sight. So one of the things I really like about the animation of the Japanese swords is that there's this very, very often this very good commitment to the strike. There is an intention to strike and cut and cleave all the way through. And this is something that you should have with European swords as well. There is this idea that you're really cutting your opponent as if they're not there. And this forces them to go on the defensive, because then they have to deal with something which is fully intentioned. Now, obviously, in dealing that blow that you intend to take all the way to the floor, if necessary, and still remain balanced, which is one of the things I like about the way they show the Japanese swordsmanship. You do your big cleaving cut, but you're behind the sword. You stay in a comfortable position that you can move on from. So if we were doing this in Lictor Now tradition, what we would try and do is make sure that our opponent has to focus their energy on defending themselves, because they can't re-attack. And then while they're doing that at the same time, we mutate our attack into another attack, or we continue that same attack. Although one thing does have to be pointed out, the use of edged weapons against armor, particularly full encasing armor, is not good. That's kind of what is designed to stop. So the idea that you go riding past people, oh well, look, that metal that you're wearing doesn't seem to have any substantial qualities. That's something that could be addressed. So the flail of unreasonable ball size. This is an interesting thing. You really, really would not want to swing such enormous balls. Having such pendulous balls would be an absolute problem in real life. They're really going to be nothing more than a hindrance. How can you actually move and recover? And recovery is a really, really important thing when you're on foot and you're fighting, because if you miss, so much of fencing comes down to what happens if it goes wrong. So having such large and pendulous balls is really, really not a good idea on a weapon. Now here we have a historical flail, something that you would use. And this is actually used very, very, very similar to one of these swords that you can probably see behind me. These are Montantes. So all of the things that you do are going to be about controlling the space between you and your opponent, cutting at them, being able to recover, being able to thrust, being able to move around any potential defense that they make, and being able to recover again to defend any potential attack or re-attack. Now, obviously, when you're using a flail, there's a lot more need to keep the momentum going. So you're keeping going, and as soon as anything goes wrong, you need to then find another way to get the whole thing moving again, because as soon as obviously the inertia's gone out of the balls, then you have a bit of an issue. So certainly the flail exists as a historical weapon. But big pendulous balls on your flail, not good. Something useful that you can recover with. But the only other thing I'd say about the flail is obviously if you have something that has a path, it has a chain on it, and it has something to swing, again, it's very, very similar to what I was saying before about the Doosan. This can still be trained in a one-handed manner. There's no reason to use it. It's whether it's the best tool for you to use. There are better tools. So yes, certainly you can use it with an improvised weapon. Certainly you can flail with it. It's going to be able to get around shields. It's going to be able to do this kind of thing. You can certainly use it one-handed. You can certainly use it two-handed. It's whether it is the best tool for you to do so properly. So, the Shotel. I don't know very much about the Shotel, and up until last week, I had never actually handled one. What I would say is, I don't want to comment on the use of this, and I would suggest that you get hold of Damon Stith and ask him, because he's an absolute expert in African martial arts, and I'd really, really like to see his
Neurotic
take on
Official. Welcome to my channel.
What we're seeing, which is consistent with the benefits of the weapon, is these descending strikes. So from what we know about Shotel fighting, that is very favorable from these high guard positions, coming down, striking over and around the shield. You know, even if you were to like parry it with another sword or another weapon, the blade would still manage to get around that weapon. So I'm glad to see those descending blows, which would have been very common for that weapon. One thing that's typically, you know, in conjunction with the Shotel is going to be the Gashan, the shield, which helps to eliminate some of the defensive issues with the weapon. Very strong sweeping blows. The Shotel are typically double-edged, but the examples that I've seen are typically sharp on both sides, and so there is a precedence for using the sword in both configurations. The grip is rounded, so it allows you to index the blade to be used either as a extremely curved Shamshir style sword or like the sickle. So it's good to see that. It looks like a couple of times he rotates the blade to use the convex edge of the Shotel and then rotates it back. So that's a really good nod to both sides being functional and the ability to be able to switch between the two. All right, so now he's fighting the guy with the shield, and this is interesting. The awkwardness of the weirdness of the design is meant to get around shields. This is one of the theories of this. It would be nice to see some of that action. I mean, it's probably difficult to kind of portray that, you know, on the game, but it would be a really cool addition to this character to be able to have movements that would allow him to get around the shield, even to like hook and pull shields down with that weapon. What did he stab him with? How did he stab him with the Shotel like that?
Rapiers. The idea that a rapier is entirely to thrust is ludicrous and ill-informed. Very often, people really look at rapiers, and what they're doing is they're looking at the hilt. It must have an ornate hilt of some kind, so therefore it's a rapier. And they don't look at the capacity of the blade. So certain blades are made for cutting, certain blades are made for thrusting. And really, you should be looking at the capacity of each sword to do both. So really, quite often, if we're dealing with, if you want to look at something as being a rapier as being a robe sword, again, one of these arming swords I show you, well, that's as robe as you can get. You hang around in your monkey robes, and we have a manual where people are fighting with these things. That's a cut and thrust weapon. How good a cut comes down to the quality and the purpose of the weapon that you build. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you a couple of small swords, because these are even more considered to be thrusting weapons, but the same choices are being made. So here is a small sword, and you could do exactly the same thing with the rapier, as I said, which is really just designed for thrusting. But that's because somebody has made the blade in that particular style. And I'm going to show you another small sword. This is not a spadroon, it's a small sword, but it is absolutely sharp on both sides. And you could cleave with this because it has weight and it is designed to cut. And then it has a nice, slightly bulged tip for the stabbing of you. So what's happened is people have got a budget, and they choose what to do with that budget. I want it primarily to thrust because that's how I think my advantage in fighting lies, or I want it to be able to cut and thrust because that's where my advantage in fencing lies. So the idea that a rapier is a thrusting weapon is completely freaking wrong. It is a cut and thrust weapon depending on the quality of the blade. You don't have an edge on it, you can't cut with it, in the same way as if you don't have a point with it, you can't thrust with it. Simple as that. However, this rapier is not a rapier, it's kind of a sword in two hands, which goes back to my original point. It's two hands, it's kind of like it's a longsword. So, it's being used as a longsword would be if you were primarily just working on hanging points, which are just thrusty, 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 thrust, twine, twine, twine. It's very weak. The fittings are kind of fantasy longsword, but again I say fantasy with a little bit tongue-in-cheek because historically we have made some incredibly florid designs on our fittings. So fantasy is just our willingness to buy gaudy things, unfortunately. So, no, it's not a good representation of either the argument of what the rapier is, nor necessarily of the form of rapier. So as far as movesets for the rapier is concerned when it's held in one hand, I don't dislike it. It's very, very simple. You start with the point facing the opponent, and you bring the point to them fairly directly, and that will be either done with your point hanging down, or your point hanging up, or your point hanging down from this side. So it's actually a pretty good set of movements, but I would say it's not necessarily restricted to
Pa nije
those
samo to,
of
mislim,
a
vidi, Rusi su,
rapier,
oni
whatever
mislim, brže stigli do Moskve čak, brate, samo što su Moskvu oni spalili. Samo što se... Da, pa jeste,
the incredibly bad use of the two-handed, the great sword, or the Zweihander, or the Biedenhander, or the Svedone. So obviously I have some very, very large swords, and I can use them all like a longsword because I practice with them. And there's information in the treaties that kind of suggests that you should be. Now, those things will be little hints like it's a sword, so therefore we should use it like swords. So I would, however, say that swinging it around one-handed is, again, not your best use of something which has got an awful lot of mass. Use the two hands on the two-handed swords. And the truth of the matter is if you're holding it in two hands, unless the thing is completely rid of balance, you can use in a very, very similar way. You know, there's this point where you're just going like, hold down the Y button, for God's sake. Just put it in two hands. Meant to be held in two hands. What the button's there for? Now, dual welding two freaking big swords, definitely. I mean, I'm completely against the holding one two-handed sword in one hand, but when you've got two two-handed swords in two hands, then I think they probably just balance out. Two things I've really enjoyed in Elden Ring are riding more, and those are all parts A, B, C, D, E of one I'd like to point out, because riding is subsets of the joy of riding. And then part two is creeping up on people using an increasingly unlikely set of noisy things that I can wear and wave around and stealth them. Great. So, the ridiculously big hammer for all of those fans of Strontium Dog. So, if you use a hammer like this, I'd suggest that you're probably not going to have an intact back to make it up the stairs. So, you certainly have weapons where there's actually genuinely advice of hit them with this really big hammer on a stick. Make sure you don't miss. And the reason being is because you're probably going to get one go to do this, and then what you're going to do, it's a little bit too heavy to use. I would suggest that the really, really big hammer, unless you have balloons supporting it to counteract some of the weight, is a bad choice in real life. As far as I'm aware, you can get turtle shields, so obviously this is not something you should be doing. You can get perfectly fine synthetic shields that you don't need, and you can get metal. You also get things like rhino skin shields and things like this, and you get leather shields. So the idea of using animal products to make something defensive is not outside the realms of possibility at all. The things that I really love about Elden Ring is obviously exploring the world is absolutely incredible. I spend ages, like I say, just riding, and I don't fight nearly as much as potentially I'm supposed to. So I really love that aspect. I love how much attention to detail there is on so many of the weapons, and I kind of wish that some of them had a little bit more access to historical replicas, or historical pieces rather. I don't mind there being fantasy weapons. I really enjoy that. I also want to have the overpowered thing, and frankly I spend most of my time being a wizard because it's easier. My name is David Rawlings and I run the London Longsword Academy, and despite the name we actually deal with an awful lot of different systems of fencing and different types of weaponry, all kinds of things. We're very, very accessible, we are very LBGT friendly, we have a excellent community and some very, very good new instructors coming through the works. I've been teaching this for 20 odd years, so I really know my business very, very well. We have a very, very long established school in London. You can find us online as well, and we are absolutely bloody amazing.
If you'd like to see more of David, as well as other martial and medieval style episodes, make sure to like the video and let us know in the comments. And I hope you'll join me in thanking David, the London Longsword Academy, and Damon Stith for collaborating with us on this video. You can check out some of their videos as well as their other information in the description below. Thanks for watching.
Where you going? Oh, please.
And she didn't like what she saw.
Melanie reading the address.
West 2? Wait, it's the news anchor downstairs. Your kids know he's there. There's cameras in their face. What do you mean you don't like what they saw? He's fucking on your staircase right now. What are you talking about? I imagine this is going to be talking about this recent fascination with obsession and blaming the subjects of obsession as opposed to the actual underlying cause of the addiction. That would be my guess. Why are so many games getting remakes? Most of them are pretty good though, so I don't even mind the trend, to be honest with you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to ACT News. I'm your host,
$10 million
Reporter
studio.
Man, and today I ask the important questions. Are you giving your child digital heroin?
I don't know why anyone
It is all
would have
about
Fortnite
addiction.
in their
I knew
home,
it.
because it is like giving a child heroin.
There's this recent trend, and it's not just gaming, where things that become a subject of addiction, which is literally anything, food, porn, games, any of it, instead of like talking about addiction itself, it's about these things should be banned because people get addicted to it. It's so weird. We've regressed so fucking much. I don't get how the fuck we went from like early 2000s of like actual progress and understanding these things and being like, yeah, maybe games aren't really the full cause of like this rise in addiction, to now full brain rot, like we need to ban porn because some people get addicted, we need to ban Fortnite because some kids get addicted, that kind of shit. Thanks to the resub shark. It's so weird. How do you ban food? Well, it's not the banning of food entirely, it's the banning of junk food. Don't know if the porn is so much about addiction though. Those are the main talking points I've seen. There's other arguments to be made about porn, I guess more so than like games and shit, but the main ones I've seen being talked about are about the addictive qualities of it, like the dopamine slot machine argument. Thanks to the 2 gift subs, Mystic. Those are the ones I've been seeing mainly. Isn't everything addictive? Yeah, which is why it's such like a fucking nothing burger of an argument.
Do you or a loved one suffer from gaming
Cheese is
disorder?
addictive. Like, legitimately, cheese triggers the same response in your brain as something like an actual drug, but I don't see a ton of people lobbying to ban cheese.
The World Health Organization recognized a condition
Or
known
caffeine
as
for
gaming
another one.
disorder.
That's another
Does
easy
the new
one.
Call of Duty actually allow you
to be a terrorist and kill people?
That's right, folks. Our top story of the day is on the dangers of gaming.
What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the most interesting news reports on video games.
Oh, he's going
I've done
over
this
half of the
before in
stories
videos
I've been
like the
seeing,
war
I
against
bet.
Video games and others, but those were more documentary style. This is not. We are going bottom of the barrel, the craziest, most out-of-touch news reports I've ever seen. I feel like it's always interesting to see what mainstream media has to say about video games and what they've had to say about them over the years. Is Fortnite too addictive? How many games put your kids at risk of pedophiles? There's a lot of fun questions for us to answer.
Now, when I
The
first
answer is
launched my
Roblox.
investigation,
Your odds of encountering a pedophile in a video game are exponentially higher on Roblox than anything else. That shit seems like almost commonplace with how often that happens there.
it was a slow news day. And on slow news days, the only thing the news does is fearmonger. But what was I going to fearmonger today?
Things are
Naturally,
playing
it was
dirty.
video games. They're too violent, too sexual. They increase aggressive behavior in adolescence.
Classic.
Players commit gruesome acts like these using top-of-the-line graphics in stunningly realistic detail.
But where to begin? My investigation. Well, I think I found just the right place to start.
The Mid-Missouri Internet Crimes Task Force says adults are now using systems like Nintendo Wii, Xbox, PlayStation, and Webkins to talk to children inappropriately.
That's right. This is the game, and you actually create your own character, house, and even town. And when connected to the internet, you can talk to people across the country. And kids have no say as to what some of these characters say to them. For example, this character could be the man in California police are warning about tonight that asked for images from Missouri children.
Wait, whoa, Tortimer, you bastard. I thought it was weird in Animal Crossing he kept asking for pictures of my nutsack. God damn it! Did we finally catch him? Is he behind bars? In a supermax cell? Son of a bitch! He infiltrated the cyberspace.
Tour timer? Could be. It could be the, or it could be the fucking goose on the left. Could also
He could be anywhere.
And kids have no say as to what some of these characters might say to them. For example, this could be the man police are warning about tonight who asked for pictures from Cyrodiil children.
I cannot come up with any legitimate reason that an adult would be playing that particular game.
No reason for an adult to play Animal Crossing. Only bad reasons.
Well, you know what? That's where Sheriff Popeye and I are going to have to agree. I can't think of a single reason any adult would be playing Animal Crossing. Especially when better games exist. Like Fortnite. He's actually making good points now.
Anderson says adults playing Animal Crossing, similar games, are likely doing it for the wrong reasons.
Crime alert. We abuse.
Anderson says it is going to take
This is
parents
hype.
paying attention to keep this problem from exploding.
Oh, you don't say. Having parents pay attention to their children and what they're doing. How dare you even suggest parenting in the modern age? You absolute harlot. You're telling people to be parents? No, that makes no sense. Just give them an iPad and unlimited access to everything online and then get mad when they find something they're not supposed to find. That's parenting. That's real parenting. Thanks to the resub Grand Pooh Bear and the Bits Mystic.
What you'll find in a lot of these news reports from like the early mid-2000s, like the news tries to frame the most innocuous of things as a problem, when really all it comes back to is just parents knowing what the fuck their kids are doing.
Now, right now, we know that only 3 children have been reported as being involved in this. Anderson says this is
What?
not a reason to be paranoid, but is something to be aware of.
While it's not a reason to be paranoid, we are
Involved
still
in
going
what?
to produce a new...
What did... Involved in sending photographs to Tortimer in Animal Crossing? Is Tortimer not just an NPC? I'm pretty sure it is. Who are they sending it to? Nintendo headquarters? What are they involved in? I need to look up Tortimer. Is he in jail? That slimy son of a bitch. Tortimer is an elderly tortoise. He's a fucking NPC. He's the mayor in the town the player moves to. Who the fuck? What are they involved in?
News segment to try and invoke those feelings of paranoia within you. Sponsor time. This is either the best decision I've made or the worst.
Yeah, I want to look up that original story. Actually, you know what, I will.
A pair of the Raycon everyday
While he's doing the ad for you, I'm gonna look up the original story.
Go for half the price of other premium brands, but they sacrifice none of the quality and sound just as good, if not better. And with over 50,000 5-star reviews, it seems that people have spoken on their quality. They come with optimized gel tips that fit perfectly within your ear.
DTD cooldown
Snug as a
commands are now
bug in a
active.
rug. And with over 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life, they're perfect for long road trips, vacations, and my personal favorite, going on runs.
They have no added context.
Significant other is yapping your head off about how you play video games 8 hours a day. Well, just turn on the noise isolation feature, and you'll tune out all of that garbage. I like to put in everyday earbuds when I'm doing chores around the house, or if I just want to listen to an awesome podcast. And the carrying case is so compact, you can take it anywhere. But it only gets better because if you go to buyraycon.com/actman, I'll give you 15% off your entire order. That's right. Click the link in the description and the pinned comment.
They actually
Order
think
yourself
Tortimer is a
pair of the
pedophile.
Everyday earbuds today. And thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring this video.
There's some Celis and Loft.
Kids can't put it down.
It has lots of graphics.
It does have lots of
I
graphics, to
tell
be
you,
fair.
the clips they choose are always the fucking funniest.
It has lots of graphics.
It has lots of graphics.
No wonder gaming gurus predict
Nintendo DS is going to redefine portable handheld gaming the way iPod is redefining music.
well, stop the music. Because it's also redefining how vulnerable your kids are to child molesters.
God! How? Explain to me how you arrived at this point.
What do you mean? We just watched about how Tortimer from Animal Crossing was soliciting nude photos of minors through Animal Crossing. Are you not paying any attention at all, Actman? He's in the mainframe. He's in their hands right now.
Along with the game capability, Nintendo DS comes with a feature called PictoChat.
PictoChat? PictoChat?
Well, let me explain. You open the DS
Oh, he
unit,
actually takes
you
a dick
turn it
pic on cam?
You push PictoChat, and your DS unit is an open book.
Oh my goodness. Then there's no safeguards in place in order to stop you from sending a nude photo of yourself. And he just pulls down his pants and like actually goatsies. And look what I've done with PictoChat. Now I will fall victim to a bad actor on the DS.
Anyone can write your child messages, send them sketches, anyone who has a DS unit.
The only reason anybody ever used PictoChat was to draw penises and send them to your siblings as you both giggled in separate rooms. Any other use of PictoChat was illegal.
Here's an example of what can happen. With Melanie and Marissa upstairs in the bedroom, I was downstairs sending them
PictoChat.
messages.
Oh, I don't know shit about it. PictoChat only works within 100 feet. You just gave me like a crazy idea for a horror movie that I don't know if it exists or not. Imagine you and your family, you're out, you know, in the middle of nowhere. This cabin in the woods, it's an escape retreat. Very cliche, very tropey. But your kid's got the PictoChat. And he's you know, you're sending dick pics, or, sorry. you're sending the drawn penises to your siblings, you're giggling about it, and then all of a sudden, a new PictoChat player pops up within 100 feet. He's in the radius. He's in the house. And then it's a game of cat and mouse. They have to use PictoChat to track down the pedophile. That'd be hype. That'd be a movie. Thanks to Prime Nemesis and the resub. Radomboy, Grave, Bean, and the Prime Branchy.
What's your dog's name? What's your name? Where do you go to school? Where do you live?
You fucking creep. Where do you live?
What are you buying? Where do you live?
In this house that I'm messaging you in?
Marissa's mom was watching as Melanie and Marissa answered my questions, and she didn't like what she saw.
Melanie reading the address.
Wait, it's the news anchor downstairs. Your kids know he's there. There's cameras in their face.
Yeah.
You don't like what they saw.
Czekam. Dobra. Oh, I gotta go eat. So, be right back. probably get honest. Okay.
Seth.
Why is it always power outage? Oh. Gotta turn my PC off, sorry.